Muy buenos días a todos los que van llegando. Estamos ya próximos a iniciar este seminario. Bienvenidos. Estamos, parecen, cerca de la hora ya, Lina.
Sí, Guillermo, sí, ya estamos en la hora. Son las 11:01 acá en Chile.
Perfecto. Vamos a dar un minutito más para que ingrese la gente y estamos ok. Bienvenidos todos y todas. Vamos a iniciar en unos breves minutos la presentación. Muy bienvenidos a este seminario sobre el tema tan apasionante de la innovación abierta. Excelente, Lina. Estamos ya casi en la hora, yo creo, para poder empezar. En este momento tenemos 29 personas. Estamos ok. Ok, bien. Quisiera dar inicio a esta actividad. Muchísimas gracias a todos los que están participando. Les saluda Guillermo A desde Transforme en Santiago de Chile. Sé que tenemos varios invitados y participantes en distintos países de la región. Está con nosotros Jon Fredrickson, que es el Chief Innovation Officer, un puesto que me encantaría tener de Innocentive, ya los voy a presentar. Pero antes de eso quisiera comentarles algunos temas de cómo vamos a desarrollar la actividad. Lo primero, comentarles que está siendo grabada la sesión y vamos a disponibilizar a todos los asistentes e inscritos una versión con subtítulos en español. La presentación está en inglés, pero obviamente para los que les resulte algo complejo o quieren compartirlo, lo vamos a resolver de esa forma. Habrá una grabación de la sesión con subtitulada en español. Lo segundo es la duración de la actividad. Vamos a tener una muy breve introducción, ¿verdad? 3 minutos míos al inicio. Luego va a haber la actividad propiamente tal de Jon y finalmente vamos a tener un espacio para preguntas y respuestas de 15 minutos al final. Mientras tanto pueden ir haciendo las preguntas por el chat, como quieran ustedes. Las preguntas pueden estar en inglés o en español, como prefieran. Yo se las traduzco a Jon para que él pueda contestar si es necesario, ¿verdad? Así que bien, bienvenidos todos a nuestra actividad. Está conmigo también Lina, del equipo de Transforme, que nos está ayudando con el proceso de este seminario, admitiendo a la gente que está entrando, etcétera, y nos va a ir ayudando también en el desarrollo del evento. El tema que nos convoca, un tema realmente apasionante, en muchos países y empresas casi una moda esto de hacer innovación abierta, pero hay maneras y maneras de hacerlo. Vamos a tener la buenísima oportunidad de escuchar de primera mano cómo se hace esto en Innocentive, que fue y es una compañía, la va a presentar Jon, que tiene ya muchos años de experiencia en esto. Fue la primera compañía que se metió en este tema de innovación abierta global, y lo hizo de la mano de Henry Chesbrough, que es el fundador del tema, ¿verdad? El que ha escrito los papers, el que todos leímos, que dijo que básicamente las compañías no debían innovar solamente con el personal interno y con tu laboratorio de I+D, sino que podías ir fuera de la compañía a encontrar ideas, soluciones, trayectorias go-to-market, decía él, muy interesante, para desarrollar tus procesos de innovación. Esta apertura, como ustedes saben, los artículos de Henry Chesbrough son del año 2004, por ahí. Innocentive se fundó el 2001, de modo que hay toda una trayectoria en este tema. Así que, sin más, los quiero presentar a Jon Fredrickson. Jon Fredrickson, como les comenté, es vicepresidente y Chief Innovation Officer de Innocentive. A los que les gusta ver el perfil de LinkedIn, ahí pueden ustedes encontrar el código QR correspondiente, ¿verdad?, para su perfil personal. Y realmente tenemos el privilegio de contar con él, que fue una de las primeras personas que se desempeñó ahí en Innocentive, que se ha transformado después de 15, 20 años en realmente casi el único marketplace global de ideas que existe, ¿verdad? Así que tenemos una oportunidad histórica para conocer ese modelo, conocer algunos casos, algunos best practices de cómo abordar el tema. Me voy a pasar al inglés para darle el paso en este momento a Jon, que va a compartir con nosotros. So there we are, Jon. Thank you very much. I was just introducing you in Spanish.
Sí.
I already told everybody we will be recording this session and providing everybody with a Spanish subtitled video once we finish. Also that we will have the 15-minute Q&A session at the end. And I have asked people to submit their questions through the chat, and if necessary, I can translate for you those questions at the end. So having said that, we go right into the activity. Welcome, Jon. Thank you.
Gracias and buenos dias to everyone. That's the extent of my Spanish. I don't want to butcher your language, so thank you for being here today and spending a little time with me. I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey and talk about problem solving using open innovation and make it real. There'll be some examples and some things that you know from other people talking about this, both from history as well as in literature today. So let's just jump right in. Let me state the obvious. We are more connected today than ever before in the history of mankind. This is a map of connections on a daily basis in social media. And some of these connections, as we might be able to argue, are good connections. Some of those are less than good connections, depending on whether you like Twitter or not. But there are more connections today than ever before. But also another reality that we face today, more than any other time in history, with this hyper connectivity that we have, we're also hyper disconnected. It's called a pandemic. It's called things that separate us. And the normal work that we used to do in offices and in laboratories or face-to-face with customers has changed. And without changing what we do, without thinking differently about how we innovate and how we connect, we're always going to be stuck. We can't be doing the same things we always did. So I like examples of things. And open innovation exposes problems to the world of solvers. The world of solvers are people in 195 countries, territories, islands in our world. But the solvers are this free agent talent that's globally now disaggregated from traditional systems where they used to work. You're familiar with the Exxon Valdez crash that happened in 1989. A firm came to Innocentive to ask us, it was set up called the Oil Spill Recovery Institute in Alaska, funded and founded by the United States government and funded and founded by all the major oil companies in the world, studying the cleanup of oil. They would take the oil from the sound and put it on those barges in the picture on the right, to then take into shore and offload to help clean up the sound. But that thick viscous material in subarctic temperatures got so thick it couldn't be sucked out fast enough. So they came and needed a challenge to break viscous shear. We talked about it differently. We took it out of the context of oil and a spill, and we talked about this in terms of breaking viscous shear. The winner, who was paid $20,000 to this 18-year-old problem, happened to have a chemistry background, but had really nothing to do with the solution. When he was at university doing his studies, he had worked construction. And in construction, there's a technique where a vibrator goes into the cement materials that are poured, vibrated at a specific frequency to make it liquid, more fluid, break the viscosity shear of that material. And he took an existing technology from a different application in industry and applied it to this. And lo and behold, it won. He donated half of his money back to the Institute to further the study of cleanups of these messes. But he connected the dots from an existing technology to something the best in the oil industry could not ever find. I like this quote, not just because I used to work for John Madonna, but it's true, that nothing stops the organization faster trying to work the way we did the day before. We have to think differently about work. We have to think differently about where talent is. Today, you may not have to hire all of your talent. You can find talent anywhere. And that's a benefit of an open innovation system. I think about what Einstein said in terms of not using the same thinking that got us into the problems we created to solve the problems that we did create. It's an important theory, and it's an important fact about why open innovation works. We're taking different thinking and applied to things. Now, we all know traditional innovation. And traditional innovation typically was we hire the best people we can, we get people pointed in a straight line at a mission that we have. And that was the way much of innovation was done. Hire the best, have events in innovation. We need to solve this problem for this program. And we would use insider information and insiders to our organization. In the open innovation model, this changes everything. This now looks at networks of people that are connected, whether socially or through other associations, people with a different angle of attack at the problem, who see the world as their lab. And when we present the correct question to these people that defines the problem that a company and an organization and a government has, and we properly frame the question, these people come with different angles of attack at the problem. Open innovation and this open talent marketplace provide you this access to these networks of people who occasionally solve, who are gainfully employed, who may be underemployed. They're well educated. They think about the problem differently when they're presented with something that clearly states what is the problem. Let me give you another example. We had a company who was one of the leaders in the oil and gas exploration industry come to us, and they had a problem in being able to identify under the Gulf of Mexico where there were fractures and fissures in the earth where oil and gas deposits might be. You might imagine the cost of drilling a hole in the Gulf of Mexico and coming up with nothing gets to be very time consuming and expensive, and you're right, it does. So they came to us and we identified a challenge, represented it, gave data to solvers who engaged, in this case, over 500 solvers from 49 countries. In this complex challenge, there were 17 submissions that came in from 4 countries. The interesting thing is who this winner was. This winner's perspective was not coming at it from geology or geoscience. He came at it from a perspective of biomedical engineering, or as a radiologist looking at x-rays. Radiologists look at bone x-rays all day. They look for fractures and fissures. And this individual knew something about that. He's very accomplished. And he used what in 3D algorithms is used for bones in developing a solution for this problem. The CEO of this company had been the former CEO of Halliburton. And he said they would never have found this person, and they would have never imagined a radiologist could have helped them. But this is the power of open innovation. Now, going on this journey from a traditional innovation strategy that you had, things that got your company to where you are and successful today, to going to open innovation, I like metaphors. So what you need is a Sherpa. So if any of you have ever climbed to the top of Mount Everest or climbed in the Andes, especially at Everest, you need a Sherpa, someone who can not only provide the right materials, but to take you to the top safely and down. Even then it's risky. But this Sherpa guidance is important in terms of getting you to your end goal for innovation, getting you to that new product or that new service that you need from a different angle of attack. You also need a method. We call it, in what we use, challenge-driven innovation. And it's really understanding the core problem that needs to be solved and representing it in such a way that people who don't have a background in it can see it and connect the dot to something that they've seen or experienced. A Sherpa will also provide you process guidance on how to think about the challenge. What type of challenge should it be? Do you just need big ideas like how do you get young men to shave more often, or how to clean a baby's bottom without touching it, which are real challenges, to highly technical challenges? So your Sherpa can guide you there. You want to think about intellectual property and how that's processed. So we'll take you through what a process looks like. I'll give you some experience on how to make this leap to a different innovation economy, the open innovation economy and open talent. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But along the way, innovators and inventors like Edison, who invented the light bulb, had to learn that failure is not bad. Now, everybody's familiar with the phrase, fail fast. And that's true. It's good to fail fast, but I have a little bit different version of it. It's fail fast, but learn always, which is really taken from Edison. He didn't look at failure as being when he would get discouraged. He looked at it as a way to learn and take another step forward to an end goal. Open innovation gives you that kind of capability to see the things that are not obvious. Solvers see those. They bring those forward. These are the things that you get when asking the right questions. There's open talent has been talked about for quite a while. Bill Joy talked about it, the founder of Sun, when he talked about most of the smartest people work for someone else. That's because you can't afford to hire everybody, but you can find people with talent and skills and ability. Google talks about it in terms of what can happen when you share knowledge. And there's billions of people that do that. We just have done some challenges with Habitat for Humanity and World Vision, not-for-profit organizations that are helping to find and collect in Mexico water from urban areas that it can be collected and purified for drinking, or making homes in the Philippines more resistant to typhoons and earthquakes from people who care about those problems and have a way to solve it that they would love to give to the rest of the world that could impact billions of people worldwide. Now, again, this is not a new phenomenon. This has been written about in many books. Some of these are very dated. There's new books coming out every day. There's over 300 on Amazon that talk about open innovation, particularly in the context of how we do it. But there's hundreds and hundreds of books talking about how this is going to change the traditional corporate structures as the economy's primary engine of wealth creation. Now, that was written about 15 years ago. And today, this is more true than ever, that the disaggregation of people, the free agent talent, can create wealth for companies and wealth for individuals and help and solutions to some of the most impoverished people on the face of the earth. Let's talk about another example. 3 critical issues for any innovation scheme are time, cost, and risk. And it's very true in the pharmaceutical industry. We came out of the pharmaceutical industry where there was 85 to 90% failure in R&D, which gets very expensive when you spend billions of dollars in R&D. In this challenge for Roche, they had a problem that they came to us with that we designed, But the interesting thing, the most interesting thing was that in 60 days time, they were able to replicate their entire 15-year history of R&D, and they found a better solution through open innovation. I don't know exactly how much money they spent over 15 years in R&D, but knowing pharmaceutical companies, this was a lot of money. And it was a great opportunity for them to use this as a tool to reduce the time, cost, and risk of innovation. And it's not just true for Roche, but in a study that Deloitte had done on biopharma companies, there was a 3 times higher probability of success when using open innovation to go from phase 1 of trials to filed in those drug categories that the pharmaceutical companies were working in. It's an extremely high percentage of improvement when open innovation is used. And this is not limited just to pharmaceutical companies. This applies to every company that we share and service across the world. So let's take it home to Latin America. Let's talk about some of the clients or client locations that we've worked with. And honestly, our clients have an option to be anonymous or to be overt about who they are. Some of our clients enjoy anonymity because it's a competitive marketplace, and others like to be public. So we have clients that we've served in Latin America, and we have solvers across America, Latin America. There's been a tremendous number of submissions coming from the area. We have a growing effort to impact Latin America by attracting more solvers in of any age. Typically our solvers are 18 years old into their 80s, but people are available and people want to win. So let me show you one specific challenge where Latin America played a huge role in a solution for the United States government, the United States Air Force. They had a problem that they wanted to solve where vehicles coming up to checkpoints that run the checkpoint to escape, or maybe they're nervous, they run the checkpoint. They wanted a way to stop those vehicles safely so that they didn't have to take more aggressive means to stop. When we launched this challenge and it named who our client was, there were over 1,000 people around the world from 63 different countries, all of the countries represented by the 3 colors, that registered to look at the challenge details. They looked at the details and what was required. After that, the blue and green countries are the ones, the 29 countries where solutions came in from. There was 119 solutions that they got to evaluate. And the winner was from Lima, Peru. This was well talked about, and the Air Force would have never found the solver. So who is he? Dante Barbas, who is retired and living in Lima, had a background that was interesting. He designed a program, and I think he worked with his son as well, who also had an engineering background, but he worked with his son to create this remote controlled vehicle that would go very quickly in 3 seconds up to 130 miles per hour. It would go underneath the car that was fleeing and then lift, there would be a system to release an airbag that would lift the car off the ground and have it just come to a stop underneath with that vehicle underneath it. The Air Force was impressed by it. They certainly thought a lot of what they saw. They had 100-fold increase in people thinking about this problem. And they had an immediate impact across multiple different scenarios that could be made. And it was talked about publicly. Reports on this were done, disseminated. Dante Barbas would never have known this was a problem, and Dante Barbas would have never engaged had it not been for a challenge. So one of the important things about challenges is, do we know what problem we're trying to solve? So this statement is really true. If you don't know what the problem is, any answer is going to look good. So as you think about challenge design, we first ask, do you really know what problem that you have? If not, we're going to keep asking you why. Why can't you solve this? Why hasn't it been solved? What have you tried? What have you done? to create a way of thinking about the problem, like all these people sitting in the room looking at, in Detroit, maybe a car that they're trying to manufacture. It's a car, but engineers think about it differently than marketing people. So you have to have a common language to describe a problem that's important to you so that you can come to a conclusion on what is the problem that needs to be solved. So we try to work with the client to understand the problem, craft it in such a way that you get diverse answers from people all over the world and be able to use their knowledge to cross the boundaries. So think about it like taking a problem and it's a metaphoric rock, and you throw this problem out into a body of water, whether it's the Pacific or a lake that you're nearby. It creates ripples, and those ripples are potential solvers. The solvers could be your own employees. Have all of your employees seen the problem? Are all the employees aware of what's not been able to be solved? If so, they may have an answer in their pocket that they could give you today, so you don't have to resolve it. But as this creates ripples that could go out to your suppliers, that could go out to people you co-create with, or go out to the rest of the world using open innovation, the problem is defined, gets clearer and clearer, and the solutions that you find from each of the ripples can come back into the organization, and through the pressure of these solutions, create these solutions that may pop out in those little droplets from where the rock metaphorically went in, that rock problem. There are good challenges and there are not so good challenges. So we think about this in terms of what are the characteristics of a good challenge? So what could engage people? What doesn't have industry jargon associated with it so that somebody gets caught up in what they don't understand because that's familiar to you? And is the problem clear and defined? Does the problem talk about what not only you want, but what you don't want? Open innovation and good challenge formulation takes these things into consideration. We also look at things that may be less than good challenges. So things that might be poorly defined. There's risk to the solver because they don't know what you really want or what you don't want. And so the solver, in order to help, will give you everything they know. That's not going to be helpful. And if you define the challenge so narrowly that only a small band of people can address the problem, you're not really opening yourself up to the option and opportunity for an unknown person with an unexpected solution to bring that to the problem that you have. So we like to work with, and we like to advise companies and organizations and researchers about the importance of understanding the problem. By doing that, you get diversity. You're going to find that odd blue duck somewhere who has the answer that you didn't imagine ever existed. And there's a process to do it. So in our world, we typically have 4 different challenge types. Some with IP licensing, non-exclusive licensing or transfer, and some where there's not. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there's details about each and a difficulty that increases as you get to things that you want to get a prototype from the solver for. Today, over 80% of the winning solvers to these challenges do not fit our client's hiring profile. That's the diversity factor that comes in. But there's also a process. So I'll walk you through this really quickly, the way we think about it as a best practice, from challenge selection and drafting to posting in an open innovation marketplace, the signed agreements that solvers have to agree to before seeing the challenge, how you evaluate, and how IP is transferred. I mentioned Sherpa before. So when you have a Sherpa, a guide to help you do this, it becomes easier to take and identify problems, needs, ideas that you have a process to review those, do the design on the challenge so that you can protect anonymity, you get intellectual property. There's an iterative process generally with the client so that the Sherpa becomes integral in that iterative process and guiding you to the correct challenge. There should be an abstract and an overview that's delivered so that solvers, when they see this in a marketplace, can say, yeah, that interests me. And the only way they see the details is by having signed solver specific challenge agreements to do that. Then typically the client gives approval to the open innovation provider to post the challenge in their marketplace. Solvers then can see the details of the challenge under confidentiality agreements, under other binding agreements for intellectual property, and they open private solver project rooms. The project rooms are where they can ask questions of the marketplace provider, us in this case, or they can get answers from the client. That's taken care of by your Sherpa. The Sherpa will support that solver base. They'll answer their questions. They'll deliver information to that solver for that solver to refine their work. And when the posting period is over, the client gets to evaluate the submissions, just like Roche did on the 115 or 113 submissions they got to evaluate those. Some can be vetted out because my answers to a pharmaceutical question would be very limited, but some can look at everything to look for where is that glimmer of something I didn't understand existed that I can take and use as a part of this. And the client ultimately can make that decision at the end, which one met the criteria. After that, your Sherpa partner should be able to do solver verification. You're judging submissions blindly. You don't know who they are. You're judging on merit. It's a fair marketplace. It's why solvers keep coming back, because they know they're going to be treated fairly and judged on the merit of their work. Once that happens, the Sherpa can then validate and verify who that person is, get their positive identity, get physically signed intellectual property agreements, so that it affects the transition, the transfer of or licensing of that technology to who the client is. And then also, if the client doesn't want to be known, your anonymity is kept by us doing all of this work, including making the awards to the solvers on your behalf. So using these diverse prisms of knowledge is really what creates something new for every organization. Things that you couldn't have ever imagined before from people with skills that you didn't know even existed. So let me give you another example or two. This one from NASA. NASA looked at themselves as having very skilled people, highly skilled in a very narrow band in that red bar against the general population. That's the way they looked at themselves before they began doing open innovation with Innocentive. When they started thinking about open innovation in reality, their organizational bump was a lot smaller, because with 7 billion people in the world, the probability that they have hired everybody that they really need and they're that significant is pretty low. And when they started looking at the long tail of innovation, that green line that goes out to 6 or 7 billion people and miles long, they thought about how tapping that long tail of innovation was more important than thinking that they and they alone had the solutions to problems for space exploration. So they said to themselves, both using this same model internally and externally, why not? We have nothing to lose. We have everything to gain by seeing what the world knows. So there's a famous challenge that gets talked about quite often that they used on solar flare activities. Solar flare activities happen and they collect data in 5-minute increments, and they've done that for years to anticipate the impact on power grids, communications, and astronauts. They had a model for predicting algorithms that had a 4-hour window of advance and 50% accuracy. They had used that for 25 years. So all of us on this call could flip a coin and predict just as well the heads or tails as the heliophysicists at NASA could predict solar flare activity. So they came to us and asked us to write a challenge. The challenge produced project rooms from over 53 countries and 11 submissions from 5 countries. And what they got was an improved algorithm with 8 hours of predictability and 85% accuracy. Now I'll ask the crowd, you can think about it, you don't have to give the answer, but what was the heliophysicist's reaction at NASA? Well, you might have guessed what it was. It's not possible. The solver was nothing like us. He wasn't educated like us. He didn't have the background. When in reality, if you looked at who he was and what he did, there's a really interesting background. So he worked for Sprint, T-Mobile now, as an engineer studying the impact on telecommunications from solar flare activity. But he also had 15 years of plasma physics research in his background. So he had applied knowledge from work, he had studied knowledge from research, and he used it to improve this for NASA. And true to form, NASA said they would have never found him. So open innovation provides you, and every organization that decides to do this, access to problem solvers around the world, and should provide you that. You can't find them today, not by what you're currently doing. And you couldn't afford to do it because it's really, really expensive to build a marketplace. Trust us, we know. So it's a little bit like looking out in the ocean at the Antarctic and seeing a iceberg. What you see there, the iceberg that you see above the waterline, those are the solvers who you would typically hire. These are the people that are known experts or the people that are fit to purpose for your organization. But what you don't see and what you want to tap and what you want to be aware of, it's what's below the waterline. The size of that iceberg, the size of the number of people using open innovation to solve problems is significantly bigger and significantly more diverse. And getting to those people, those unknown solvers that might be able to fit to purpose, answer something from a very different perspective. That's what open innovation gives to you, this opportunity to find the unknown unknowns with the unexpected answer to the problem that you face. So I like to think about, again, innovation as a story. So innovation for me is a little like fishing. So there's parts of fishing that we all experience, right? If I was coming to Chile, if I was going to Mexico, if I was going to Colombia, I would want to understand where to go fishing. Would I have the fishing gear? Would I have the guide? Would I have my Sherpa who could take me out in the boat? So that's fishing. But there's a second part of fishing, and that's called catching. So my hope when I go fishing is that I'm going to catch something. And that could be a wonderful thing. Now, maybe I think about this before I go out on the boat fishing, or maybe I think about it while I'm on the boat, but I want to think about a decision that I need to make. So if I catch a bluefin tuna, maybe I just want to take a picture, be happy with it, and put it back in the ocean to live again for another day, to breed, whatever that is. Or maybe if I catch a really big bluefin tuna and the price of bluefin tuna in the marketplace is really high, I may decide, hey, I'm going to catch this, take it back, and sell it in the marketplace because I can make some money. That's a decision I can make. I can also make the decision, hey, my friends and I, we like tuna. Let's eat that together. Let's have something that we can share. There's a fourth decision, and I'll tell you about that in just a minute. But fishing, this is like real open innovation. So fishing is the challenge that gets created. This is what attracts the fish in. This is what says, here's my bait. This is the thing that I'm trying to work on and solve. And the catching part is when a solver says, I get it. I want to submit. I think I have an answer for that. And that's when a solution is found. So there's many definitions for what innovation is. And every time I'm in a workshop with clients, we can have 15 executives in a room. And I ask in every workshop for the executives to complete a sentence, which is innovation is. And they have to complete the sentence. We take their written answers. And at a break, we show the answers to the group without attributing it to any one individual. And in a room with 15 people, there will be at least 18 different answers for what innovation is. There's an official definition that really talks about innovation in terms of execution or transition. So when you find something, when you've caught the fish, do something with it. But you need to start thinking about that before you begin, so that you have resources, that you have partners, maybe like Transforme, who can help you commercialize something or think strategically further about what you've just found, but you need to get a commitment, because the fourth decision, which I didn't put up and I want to mention, there is a fourth decision, and it's the worst one possible. And that decision is, I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to leave the fish on the boat just to die. And there's no value in any of it. That's like innovation. When you find a solution using open innovation or using innovation, period, whether internally and collaboratively or not, if you fail to use it, it's not innovation. You just let the fish die on the boat. Don't do that. That's a simple message. Don't do it. Go fishing, but don't do it. So how would I recommend you start your journey? You know, this is great to talk about all of this, but where do you start? Well, I'd say first, find your Sherpa. And we think highly of Transforme. We know the work they do. They would be a great Sherpa for you to begin consulting with. We'd love to help, and we can be a part of that. But Transforme is familiar with this. They do a great job. Find your Sherpa. Look for experience as you begin this open innovation journey. You want to make sure as you start looking for doing this, go places where there's experience. Do they have a system? Is there a process? How is IP structured? Is there a platform? Do they have a methodology to design challenges, to identify your problems, and to produce results that, in cases that have been studied by Forrester, will give you 182% return on the investment in under 2 months, or replicate 15 years of R&D history? If you can avoid that and not have to spend 15 years because you found an innovative solution beforehand, your firm is further ahead. Find a place where there's a real crowd of solvers, diverse solvers from all over the world. Find a place where you're not just talking to the same subject matter experts. When we were founded and came out of the pharmaceutical industry, one of our founders said, look, if we have a chemistry problem, we don't need more chemists to look at it. We need people with diverse backgrounds to look at this problem, because we hire chemists. We've talked to all the other subject matter experts. You need that diverse crowd of people who trust the marketplace and show up to answer questions. You need to have your leadership make sure that they understand that now is the time to change from that traditional, remember at the beginning, the line of people that just follow a line and we've done what we've always done. We need to have leadership think about what it takes to compete now in this marketplace where open talent is more open and available than ever before, and where the importance of solving problems with other people, paying them accordingly for their solutions, but finding them and getting to them with your challenge is important. So leadership has to be committed. You want to make sure that as you enter this open innovation world, that you can get proof that this really does work, that there are case studies or examples of things that would show this can work. And lastly, you have to align on what innovation is for your company. What is it? If there is no common definition for what innovation is, it's a great buzzword to have in annual reports. It's a great thing to talk about. But if there's 15 people in a room and 18 definitions for what innovation is, you're not aligned. And last but not least, go fishing. There's no harm in doing this. That you have nothing to lose, as our clients tell us. We didn't know, we weren't sure, but we had nothing to lose, especially if they've spent 15 years trying to solve a problem. So with that, last thing I'll just say is this is a little bit about Innocentive. I really didn't talk a whole lot about it. You'll get this in what you get from us after the workshop from Transforme, but we'd be happy to talk to you and help you if we can with your Sherpa partner, Transforme. But thank you. That's the end of my discussion formally, and I'm happy to spend the next 15 minutes taking questions. It looks like there's some.
That was really very good, Jon. Thank you so much for your very good presentation. Some examples I didn't know about. Those are really good, solid examples.
Sure.
So thank you very much for all your presentation and your comments. There's some clapping going on in the room, so that's very good. And we have some questions on the chat. The first one is in English. It's both of them are in English, really. Andres Cortez is saying, we have seen examples that enforce the benefits of open innovation, etc. However, many companies are still centralizing all the innovation activity, working with internal teams, at the most have initiatives and partner with R&D centers and universities.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no real commitment to open innovation in shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say you can really convince the top leaders in an organization this is a useful thing? I mean, how do you go about it? Because many people start very, very prudently, working with your own people, doing very short scope things. How would you go about really convincing the top guys, the shareholders, really?
Sure. There's great use cases around it. The Forrester study that was done with 182% ROI really was around this model of the ripples in the water, where you can innovate inside with employees through a platform technology in idea or solution management, which Wazoku has, our parent company now that purchased us. But also, as you look at the ripples going out, those ripples should represent universities and other suppliers, strategic partners in what we think about it would be a co-creation community. But if that's the furthest your ripples go, you forgot about the rest of the ocean. And I worked with one of the largest automobile companies in the world, and I said, let me ask you where you go for innovation. Well, we go to universities, we go to subject matter experts, and I said, great, that's perfect. But I bet all of your competition go to the same universities and subject matter experts, right? Yeah, they do. So the other thing about centers of excellence and R&D centers, those are great when they're focused on all forms of innovation. What I've seen in some companies, and this is a cultural thing, you never want to be in an innovation island. So if you're in a big firm and you're on Innovation Island and everybody's told, go to Innovation Island, they're going to give you something, that's a dangerous place to be. Innovation Island can get awfully small, or Innovation Island can be awfully big with lots of ports where people, business units and problems can find a port, a dock to come into to get help and support. So the innovation centers that have use of universities, SMEs, open innovation, internal idea management, those kinds of solutions, those are the most successful units like that because they're looking at all forms of innovation.
Okay, so that's a very good. In fact, the second question in the chat right now was exactly about that. Should you start out with the open innovation or also manage internal idea contests and all the stuff? So your answer right now goes straight to the point. What you do is this ripple effect, which I liked a lot in the ocean. I'm going to say that in Spanish just in case for some of us here.
Please.
Lo que dice Jon, que es muy interesante, dice, oiga, usted cuando va a crear un área de gestión de la innovación, asegúrese de que procese y utilice todos los tipos de innovación simultáneamente. No se quede solo con la abierta ni solo con la cerrada, haga un poco de todo, haga alianza con la universidad, haga alianza con startups, trabaje con su propia gente y tenga estas iniciativas de gran alcance, porque la analogía que él hace del ripple dice, cae una gota de agua de verdad en el agua y se producen ondas. Y dice él, cuando uno trabaja, ve las ondas esas, ¿de dónde vas a ir a capturar ideas? Esas ondas alcanzan un cierto diámetro y ahí mueren, pues. Entonces dice, el problema es que todo el resto del océano está lleno de potenciales solvers para tu problema y tú no los alcanzas. Si solo te haces una alianza con 3 universidades, un centro de investigación, 4 startups, no alcanzas el resto del mundo donde potencialmente ese long tail que él mencionaba, potencialmente hay muchas ideas. I'm going to go back into the question in English that says here, question comes to mind due to possible employee resentment for not trusting them with finding a solution. So how do you go about that?
That's a perfect question. Thank you for asking that. And it's a very real thing. So there's something that we talk about in our workshops with clients. We talk about antibodies. And antibodies, if you know in the human anatomy, the antibodies attack things that are foreign. And it would be completely normal to feel that the company doesn't trust me. I was hired as the expert. And this is the NASA experience. They hired people as experts to do it. So there's an overt thing of not invented here. It has to be our people because our people understand the industry. There's a covert antibody, which is, oh no, I might be redundant. I might not be needed. The company doesn't trust me. So we put that out on the table when we do workshops as a reality. And also the reality is, instead of the 15 years Roche spent with their people doing R&D and getting frustrated that they couldn't find an answer for 15 years, think about to work with. They're not just fishing anymore. They caught something. Now they have something to eat or take a picture of. You're giving them solution work. You need them. In fact, if the more solutions you give them, the more people like them can get hired. You can grow your business when you solve problems faster, at lesser cost, with more diverse perspectives and less risk. So it's a very real thing. It's important to put it on the table. This is not about trust. The former CEO for Procter & Gamble said, we want to go from an NIH culture, not invented here, to a PFE culture, proudly found elsewhere. And that's a huge shift that leadership needs to communicate to their people. They need their staff, but you're going to give them solution work and reward them, recognize them for being brave enough to come forward. We had a client that gave their experts a $50 gift card to Starbucks or their favorite place just to bring a problem forward. And they would say, you know, Guillermo just brought me this problem. We want to thank him for that. We're going to use open innovation, or we're going to use idea management to solve the problem. We're going to ask other people. That's something we want to reward and recognize. And you change culture overtly by simple actions.
Sure, simple and small, you know,
yeah.
Very, very effective. Cyril was asking a few minutes ago, and Nicolas, our friend from Bogota, answered him in Spanish, but I would like to ask you the following. There are several types of challenges, as you explained. You know, there's theoretical challenge, there's reduction to practice, and you end up with different levels of detail or levels of the solution. So when would you recommend, or how would you recommend to actually do this? You start out by using standard type of ideation challenges, or you go to the more technical, like theoretical paper submission or whatever. How do companies start going about this? Because there's several types of challenges you can do, and there's actually several types of solutions that you get. How do you think about that?
Yeah, so we think about it in terms of how we start engaging with the client. Does the client really understand the problem? And the methodology, when the client tells us, I want to solve world hunger. Okay, that is just that's a big problem, and that's not one problem. That's many underneath it. So we'll ask questions like a 5-year-old child: why daddy? Why mommy? Why daddy? Why mommy? Why can't you solve it? What did you try? Why didn't that work? So the method is really simple: to understand the problem. Then we ask the question, what kind of intellectual property do you need? Where are you in the product development life cycle? Ideation challenges can be used across the pipeline. They've been used at the end to look at what ideas do you have for distribution for the project or manufacturing. We've had technical questions asked at the beginning. They're designed to work together as well. So if I get great ideas from ideation, maybe I take the best and try and get a theoretical challenge that gives me more detail in a white paper, and maybe get a prototype. So we try to advise. We become the Sherpa at that point to try and advise the client based on what IP they're looking for, what problem they have, what challenge types might work best, and what the relative award amount might be. So we make those recommendations so that it makes it easy for the client to just be there to tell us about the problem and then have us do the design work. that we would do with Transforme and clients as well.
Exactly. Many thanks, Jon. There's one question here is what similarity do you see in the concepts around digital transformation implementation and open innovation implementation?
Sure, it's a great question, and thank you for that. There's one thing I know from 15 years in doing this is that there's lots of terms that are difficult to define. So when I hear digital transformation, my question is, describe that to me. What do you mean by it? And every company has a different definition. So digital transformation as a concept and open innovation, I think fit well together, because you're really going from that traditional line up, hire people, do everything internally, to something on digitizing many, many things. But you also need to have that experience in getting it done. Diving into open innovation, I've seen at least 30 different companies over the last 15 years that thought, let's put up a website and do a challenge and we'll figure it out, either for that company themselves or to try and get into the open innovation space. It's difficult to build a crowd. It's very difficult to build a crowd. So if this is part of digital transformation, I would ask the question, tell me what your definition for digital is. Let's find out if and how this might work and where it would plug in best, and get some understanding in the organization so that it's well supported once it's brought in as part of digital transformation. I hope that answered the question. It's a big topic, and we only have 3 minutes left.
Digital innovation is really a big animal, isn't it? So
it is.
Anyway.
It is.
I hear Carlos was answering or thanking you for your answer and saying, why don't we do problem submission challenges? Yes, I was going to explain that we've been doing that for years now. We have what we call a reverse challenges. Submit your problem, we get the idea.
Yeah.
Or else submit your problem, then we work on them, and then you yourself give us the ideas. How would you do it? And we've done that regularly. It's a good idea to increase the level of participation and collaboration within the company, because people are sitting on top of problems all day in their day-to-day operations. So it's something that we normally do in the challenge design phase, is crowdsource problems, not ideas. That has worked out really well. And you do that before actually working with you guys or whoever it is to actually open up the challenge. You crowdsource the problem. Right. It's a very good methodology. So I think we're arriving to the end of the meeting. I really want to thank you a lot, Jon. I don't know if you want to say a few words to end up the webinar, but I think it has been very helpful for all of us, and we thank you very, very much for your participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My only thing I will say is thank you. Thank you very much for your time today. Go fishing, find your Sherpa and go climbing, but be brave. Go out, make this happen. This is not new anymore. This is something that can change the world around you and your company. So thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Jon.
much, Jon. Muchísimas gracias a todos los participantes. Tal como les comenté, la presentación va a estar disponible, ¿verdad?, subtitulada en español para todos los presentes, así que ahí no va a haber ningún problema. Muy agradecido también de los participantes, de las preguntas que hubo, etcétera. Esperamos haber agregado valor en esta reunión, y yo creo que me gustaría quedarme con el desafío que nos deja Jon. Dice salir a pescar, go fishing. Yo creo que eso es lo principal y nos ocupa a todos en las empresas, estemos o no estemos directamente en el tema de innovación, es convencerse que salir a pescar puede permitir que pesques un pescado, y tal como dijo Jon, probablemente con muy poco riesgo, mucho más rápido y con gente, solvers, que nunca habrías conocido ni contratado en tu empresa y que te van a caer de Singapur o de cualquier lado. Piensen ustedes que un challenge de la Fuerza Aérea de Estados Unidos, el ganador estaba en Lima y jamás habría entrado en contacto con alguien de la Fuerza Aérea de Estados Unidos si no fuera por un modelo así. Entonces, esto es abrirse de mente, pero físicamente abrir las fuentes de ideas al mundo entero, y eso es lo que ofrece la plataforma Innocentive. Y Innocentive, Wasoku son hoy día compañías hermanas, ¿verdad? que nosotros representamos en Latinoamérica e implementamos en los clientes. Así que muy agradecido de su participación. Ahí pueden seguir dice Nicolás, ahí está entregando los perfiles, tanto de Jon como el mío, etcétera, para que nos puedan seguir y estamos a su disposición. Muy agradecido de su participación y nos estamos viendo en otra oportunidad. Muchas gracias. Saludos a todos. Un gusto.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Jon.